Lacrosse community, my name's Ryan Berns. I'm the founder of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse, to recognize the skills you gain from the sport, to ultimately live the life of your dreams. Today, we are so fortunate with an absolutely amazing guest. Dom Starsia is a four-time NCAA championship coach. He spent a lifetime being a part of the sport, giving back, empowering athletes to reach their full potential. And we are so lucky to have him share his story with us today. Dom, thank you so much. Can you start by letting all those in our community that may not know how you started in lacrosse, give them a little point of view and perspective on where you started and where you are today?
Yeah, happy to do it, Ryan. Certainly happy to be here. And my background is actually a little unusual. And so when I'm talking to young players in particular, I use my background in the game as, you have players that are a little short on confidence or experience, and they're a little discouraged about that. And, I grew up on Long Island, which is a real lacrosse hotbed, but my town did not have lacrosse. We didn't have lacrosse in my high school. And so in my town, we all grew up playing football, basketball, and baseball. And I got recruited to Brown University to play football. And in the days when you had to play on freshman teams in your first year, I happened to be the captain of that freshman football team. And a buddy on the football team said to me, why don't you come out for lacrosse? And, I was the first generation in my family to go off to college. And frankly, I was a little lost academically and a little lost socially, most comfortable over on the athletic side of things, and so growing up in Long Island, I'd heard of lacrosse, but I literally had never seen it. And so there was a curiosity factor there. And the truth, Ryan, is that I went out for lacrosse as a freshman. Again, I benefited from that being the days when you had to play on freshman teams in your first year. So all the best freshmen were on one team. We weren't kind of lost in the varsity, what was going on at the varsity level. And so we could develop on our own. And I tell people all the time, you're not going to believe this, but I literally fell in love with the game the first time I picked up a stick, almost as if when I first picked up a stick, I felt like this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And, so lacrosse almost became a distraction to my football career almost immediately. I played 2 more years of varsity football. But I was, I was hooked on lacrosse at that point, and so played the 3 years on the varsity. And then, strangely enough, when I graduated, the head lacrosse coach at Brown was also the head soccer coach. And in these days, you wouldn't hire someone in his main sport right out of college, without more experience. And literally, the day I graduated, I became the first assistant in soccer and lacrosse, and I had literally never kicked a soccer ball until that point. And and so I coached soccer for 6 or 7 years until I took over the lacrosse program. I was the assistant lacrosse coach for 8 years before I took over in 1983, and then I was the head lacrosse coach at Brown for 10 years. So when I'm talking to young players and I'm saying, look, if you feel like you're a little behind your peers, or you don't have as much experience, your stick is not as good, you're talking to someone who didn't pick up a stick till he was 18 years old, and so when I'm telling people that, you can get on the wall, and you can improve your standing. I'm an example of that. I was literally on the wall every single day. And you would probably believe me because of the progress I made in the game, but that's what I did. And so again, when I'm talking to young people and I'm asking them whether or not are you allowed to do wall ball, and if the weather's bad, if it's raining or snowing, and the answer, of course, is yes, you are. And I'm an example of that. So I coached at Brown for 18 years after having gone there and graduated. And then got the job at the University of Virginia in 1992, coached at Virginia for 24 years, and then retired in 2016. And I coached a little bit in the MLL. I coached in the PLL for a year. And now I'm actually, sort of back to my roots, although my roots are not traditional, but I'm coaching at the Blue Ridge School, which is a small prep school about a half an hour from my home here in Charlottesville. And I'm loving it, frankly. It for me, what I'm doing at the high school level, it's a better fit for me personally even than what I was doing with the pros. You travel with the pros, you're off on the road every weekend. You might have a short practice the day before the game. You generally don't have every player there. The next day you've got, 18 or 19 guys dressed for the game. And they're really like glorified all-star games, where for me, what I loved about coaching, I love the practice field. I love the daily contact. I love talking to young people and thinking that you might have an influence on people. And so what I'm doing right now suits me better probably than what I've done the last couple of years in terms of the coaching piece of lacrosse. And so that's where we are. And we're having some fun right now with the Blue Ridge guys. We lost our first game this past weekend in overtime. We clanked the ball off the bar and off the crossbar in overtime, but then we went off sides, and so but we're getting better, and like I say, I've thoroughly enjoyed everything that we're doing.
Oh, that's so cool, Dom. Just in terms of what you're able to do and who you're able to connect with, I'm sure is built up a lot of amazing relationships. And it sounds like that's what you really like now, is being able to talk with someone over the course of the season and be able to get them to a whole new level. If you look over your entire career, do you have a pinnacle moment, or are there a couple pinnacle moments that really stick out to you?
Well, it's when I came to the University of Virginia in 1992, Virginia had not won a national championship for 20 years at that point, and clearly that's what they that's what they expected of me, is to get them back to that point and win and win a championship, and so in my second year here at Virginia, we got to overtime of the NCAA finals and lost. I remember walking off the field thinking, this is easy. It's only my second year here. We're going to win 100 of these things, and then the next year we got to the Final Four, lost in the semifinals. The next year, now my fourth year, we got back to overtime of the NCAA finals and lost again, and so I began to appreciate that it's hard to win, which is a lesson now that I can turn around and tell my Blue Ridge players, never mind the other Virginia players and everybody, a lot of other people that I happen to run into and groups that I speak of. It's hard to win, and you're generally going to run into a little adversity along the way, and those are all valuable tools in this journey. And so we got to. So I arrived at Virginia in '92. My first spring was '93. We won our first championship, our NCAA championship, in '99. And so clearly for me, like I say, I would never put one championship above another, or one season that's even necessarily above another, because when I'm talking to people, I'm telling young people that it's not just about the championships. It's about playing to your potential. So we've had some great seasons that did not result in championships. But getting over that, getting that first one done in '99, and the things that went into it, and the learning experience, even for me, in terms of recognizing what we needed to do in order to get there and finally accomplish that. Certainly that '99 season was a crucial moment, a critical moment in my career. We were fortunate to win a couple more championships. We had some outstanding seasons. Ryan, I tell people, again, Mike Pressler, the coach at Bryant, the former coach at Duke, if I happen to be talking to a group and he's sitting nearby, I used to say, the championships are not that important. It's about the relationships, and he would nudge me a little bit and say, hey, Dom, hey, that's easy to say when you've won 4 of them, and so I'm mindful of my language in that regard, but especially now that I'm out of it out of college coaching for 4 or 5 years now, I would tell you, Ryan, that it is about the relationships. It really is. Those are the things that stand the tallest in my lifetime. I think of a young man like Zed Williams, who played for me. He was the PLL MVP this past summer. Off a reservation in Western New York, first in his family, one of 10 children, first of his family to ever go off to college, first one to successfully graduate. he traveled the furthest from his commitment to us, which scared me because I wasn't sure that he could do it, what was going to be required at Virginia. To me, being at his graduation, that was a highlight of my career, being at Zed's graduation. So moments like that and personal moments that they stand right alongside the championships and things like that. And again, I would just tell people that, it's not just about the championships. It's about moving toward your potential, both individually and collectively as a group. You have one of those seasons when you played as close to your potential as you're capable. Those are the kind of seasons that are going to, you're going to walk away with memories that you're never going to forget. And if they happen to include a championship at Virginia, we generally were good enough is that when if we were willing to make the sacrifices that were required and we were able to capture one of those championships, if we were willing to make the sacrifices, then we did capture a championship, and we had that to be able to look back on. Those two things don't always come together right at the end, but you can still experience that in athletics without necessarily, being a national champion, or whatever, so for me, it's a combination of all those athletic moments. I don't diminish those, but the relationships and that I've fostered along the way certainly stand right there for me.
And I'm sure you have a thousand of those relationships just like Zed, and that's so powerful to hear. So thank you for sharing that, Dom. And one of the things that's just popping up in my mind is you talk about how hard it is to win, but if you're able to do the sacrifice, and to me, it sounds like the team buy-in, the culture, that's ultimately that can give you the ability to reach your full potential. It still may not be able to accomplish that, but you've been able to do it 4 times. Can you talk a little bit more about the culture, the sacrifice, what it takes to get to that level?
Well, there are sort of 2 pieces there from, off the bat. One is that, I talk about, people of value have scars, and so we run into some adversity along the way. It's hard. Again, it's hard to win, and there's no deserve. You come to realize that also. There's only making the play that wins the game or not making the play. We may have deserved to win our first game a couple of days ago. We were down 2 in the fourth quarter. We came back. We hit the post in overtime. But then we went off sides and the other team won the game, and that's the way it works. And so the question is, what do we do with that experience? Do we learn from that and move forward? And so, not to be afraid of a little adversity, not to be afraid of some failure along the way. All the great ones experienced that. You look at Belichick, who almost got run out of Cleveland before he wound up in New England. Tom Brady was a last round draft choice. Maryland lacrosse. Maryland wins the national championship in 2017. Maryland, in the state of Maryland, with all that recruiting, playing in the ACC for most of those years, they were 42 years between championships to 2017. They had been in the NCAA final game 9 times, without winning, and then finally they captured that championship in 2017, and so it's the experience of all that, and a lot of that makes you more approachable to people, that people know that you've suffered some. It makes your message a little bit more real, genuine and real, that people know that you've suffered, and then the second piece of it, Ryan, is, when I'm talking to these different groups, and I've talked to lots of teams at all different kinds of levels, both on the men's and women's side, I always end by saying, if I had to put it all into a one sentence, what is it that I've been doing for 42 years? It's trying to convince groups of young men and women that it's worth it at the end of the day. It's going to require sacrifice and commitment. And when you're standing there looking at that mountain of anticipation, you're thinking, I don't think I can climb that mountain. I don't have the goods, whether we're going to behave ourselves in a certain way, or we're going to get up in the morning and lift weights, or we're going to shoot extra on our day off, or whatever it takes. At the end of the day, all those sacrifices, it's worth doing. And invariably, while we've already talked a lot about it's hard to win. What I've experienced is that when you win, when you get to that moment, when you get over that mountaintop, you look back and you think, that wasn't so hard. I can still remember that 99 team, that 99 team of mine here at Virginia, they made some sacrifices off the field that Virginia student athletes had not always been willing to make, and I can remember guys wrestling with the decision about whether or not to do that. I can remember guys standing up saying, I'm going to, I don't want to do this, but in the end, we won the championship. And one of those guys that was the most animated about not wanting to make the sacrifices beforehand, he came to me in the parking lot after the championship and he said those words to me. He said to me, Coach, that wasn't so hard. I wanted to knock him out. You tortured me, and that's what it is. And so you're telling people that with all the sacrifices that are required, they are required in order to be successful. At the end of the day, there's not a lot of other things you're going to do in your life that are going to provide more satisfaction than accomplishing something as a group. There is that group endeavor. And for college athletes, who are sort of at the end of most of them are at the end of their team playing career or the serious team playing career. I tell those guys, look, most of you guys are going to have the Virginia grads. I went to Brown, the Brown grads. I said, you're going to have a great life. You're going to meet a great person. You're going to get a great job. I said, but you're not going to do something like this again, where you're going to get together with 40 of your peers and make common sacrifices for the common good. And I'm telling you that if you accomplish what your goals are, it'll be worth all the sacrifices that were required in order to make it happen, and so, I spend a lot of time trying to convince young people that it's worth it at the end of the day.
And that's an interesting point. I'm thinking about the fact that all athletes, especially if you're playing at such a high level, you're going to have a great life. If you made it through 4 years, you've got the education, you've got a great background, you're going to get a great job, and you have skills that allow you to be successful. But it's trying to wrap everyone together, sort of the same mission and a goal. And I think in one of the articles I read that you wrote, you talk about leadership is twofold. One, it comes from the coaches, but it also comes from the peers and the players themselves. Can you talk a little bit more about what leadership means to you?
Yeah, I find myself talking to those two groups. I talk to lots of teams, and so I'm talking to athletes. And so what I'm talking about there is, peer leadership. And then I find myself talking to coaches. I talk at the coaches convention, or I'll meet with coaches at different schools. They'll ask me to come and do that. And then you're talking about leadership more in a position of responsibility. A lot of the qualities are the same. There is some nuance to what's required and stuff. When I'm talking to athletes, when I look back at all the teams that I've had, people always want to know what's the key ingredient to success. Again, having lived through 99 and then other years, other championships that we got through, and being able to look back at this, in almost every instance, the teams that got the closest to their potential were the ones that had outstanding internal leadership. The coaches are, going to be fairly consistent. They're going to be a constant in your life. We're going to evolve from year to year. We're going to try to get a little smarter. We're going to do those things. But you're going to sort of be able to know what you can count on if you're in a program and you're with a coach for 3 or 4 or 5 years. The differences between whether a team can reach that top level is generally, I think, the leadership within the locker room. And so I talk to guys and gals, teams about what's required there, and qualities like the first one. I was actually out in Missouri, Andy Kay's Missouri Country Day team. I flew out to Missouri, spent a couple of days out there with them, and I was talking to the team, and then one day, one of the younger players actually came up to me afterwards and said, "What's the single greatest quality of outstanding individual leadership?" And so the guy put me on the spot a little bit, and I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. And the word that just came to mind for me is one that I still use first and foremost when I'm describing the qualities that I think are there for are required in order for that. And the first one is fearlessness. And so, I talk to young people again about, being able to stand up in front of your peers and say, this is what we're doing. We're going to do it like this every single time. And we are not going to be distracted from our goal. That's hard to do. That's hard to do. It's a lot easier to just go along. In turn, that person needs to have a sense of, being hard on his teammates or his peers, but without going over the edge. There are a lot of screamers, guys that like to scream at you in practice or scream at you in the locker room. That's a lot easier than having a meaningful conversation. And so those real leaders, those genuine leaders, have a certain fearlessness, but they also have a sense of, when it's too much. And so they're willing to go to the edge, but they don't step off the edge, and so that fearlessness. Selflessness is another one, being willing to make the sacrifices that are required, for a player. We're all going to have to make some sacrifices in order for this team to do what it needs to do. And if you wake up, I tell young people, if you wake up in the morning and the first thought is, what can I do to help this team get better? Then you probably have that quality, that selflessness quality that's going to be required in order to be a great leader. There's an element of toughness involved, and toughness for me is not taking somebody's head off. Toughness for me is consistency. I talk about that all the time. That to me, is one of the key components of for young people growing up. A lot of guys want to drop their hands and fireball in the top corner, and they may hit only one of those per week, but it's enough to satisfy them because it really looks cool. I said, I'm not interested, fellas, guys and gals. What I want to know is who's going to pick the ground ball up late in the game, who's going to throw a good pass, who's going to catch the ball, who's going to put their shot on the cage when the game is being decided. Being a consistent performer is one of the key qualities for individual individual leadership. You need to be a hard worker. You don't have to be first in the running, but your effort has to be first, so that when you turn to your teammates and say, hey, you got to get going, we got to get going here, they know that you are giving them maximum effort every single time. In 99, that 99 Virginia team, the thing that got us over the hump was a senior on that team, a fellow by the name of Tucker Radebaugh, who just decided, it had been 27 years since Virginia's last championship at that point, and he just decided it's going to be different this year. And that is, to this day, is probably still the hardest working team I ever had. And Tucker was the hardest worker on that team, and so by example, he was that guy in the locker room, and he led by example in terms of the work piece of it. So again, he wasn't even our best player. He was a great player, but he wasn't our best player necessarily. But when he said, hey, we got to do these other things, everybody looked at him and knew that he was willing to do it. Self-discipline, you want to be able to talk to people and you want to have some moral authority, then you got to be walking that walk yourself. You can't be someone who is late to study hall or, failing half your classes and expect to be a leader. It goes back to that when you talk to the teams and say, look, you can't be a knucklehead 22 hours a day and expect to come over here and be the kind of person that's going to lead your peers for those 2 hours that you happen to be over here. We need to practice those qualities of leadership, and you practice those over on campus, whether it's we're on the corner, or we're in a library. Either way, you got to be able to do that thing, and then finally, the one that in that regard would be is also having a resilient spirit. Being someone who's willing to smile. You're easier to listen to if you're pleasant. So again, that guy that likes to scream and thinks that's leadership, it's not. Sometimes it requires you walking up to some guy that's suffering a little bit on your team and whispering in his ear, hey, you're doing a nice job. And if you're someone who has a little sense of humor and a little lightness of spirit, then you're going to be easier to listen to as a leader. And it's funny, as I've explored this topic over the last few years, one time I remember Googling sort of leadership and sense of humor or something like that, and what came up was all these people in the military, whose lives are on the line, and all the, Dwight Eisenhower talking about how having a sense of humor is a key component of leadership. These are people whose lives they're putting their lives on the line, and yet they still feel like they appreciate being able to smile and having a resilient spirit, knowing that you're going to get knocked down. It's not the end of the world, bounce back up and get ready to make the next play. And so all of those qualities go into making a great leader as a coach and as a person who's in a position of responsibility at the same time, then some other things for the coaches and for the administrators, being willing to do the things that need to get done, taking responsibility. I hear a lot of coaches, now my players don't listen to me, or I'm missing this or I'm missing that. What I say to them, hey, tough luck, figure it out. I took some education classes at Brown as an undergraduate, and I had probably the best professor I had in my 4 years was an education guy. And he talked about, he said, you're responsible for everything that happens in your classroom. I don't want to hear about it. You got kids that don't listen, kids that misbehave, figure it out, fix it, and that made one of those things that just made an impression on me. I carry it all the time. So, I always felt like, okay, I've got to figure out what we want to do here. We want to get better. All right. How are we going to do that? And so those kind of things, I think I talk to coaches about their language. You talk to the peers about talking to your peers. Well, with coaches, I talk about the benefits of positive language. One of the subchapters in my book is you can never take it back. And even more of a sub than that is they never forget. And so when you're talking to student athletes, I heard a talk early in my coaching career at Brown, and I remember it was a staff outing that we had to go to. I didn't really want to go, but I went, and this guy was talking about, the benefits of positive language, of couching things in positive terms, and for some reason it resonated with me. Most coaches are, you're generally the smartest guy on the practice field. I like to think I have a wit, and these young people, they give you so much food for sarcasm. When I became a better coach when I learned to bite my tongue, and so you say something to somebody that cuts them to the quick, I'm telling you, they will never forget it. You'll never be able to take it back, and they're never going to forget it. And so, when you're, again, I like to smile. I tell all my players, even the Blue Ridge kids now, hey, this is the best part of the day for me, boys. I want to have a good time. We're allowed to smile out here, but again, you talk about the real joy of the exercise is playing well, and so it's not grab assing in the back of the line. It's not, gossiping and fooling around. That's not it. That's nothing. When a drill goes really well, or when we play really well, that's when you're going to feel the deep joy that athletics can bring to you and stuff. And so anyway, but I think for coaches, especially young coaches, what I would suggest to you is think twice before you blurt it out, and don't make it personal, and it doesn't mean that you're soft, kids want to be coached. They want to be coached hard. You're allowed to yell at athletes, but make it consistent across the board with how you treat people, and don't make it personal. That part of it, and then you're going to find that again, that young people want discipline. They want to know what the rules are. They just want them evenly enforced, and so the subtle nuances of talking to young people about leadership amongst their peers, and then talking to people of responsibilities that have some slightly different things that they need to be thinking about.
Dom, there's so many things that go into that idea of being the epitome of a leader, but what keeps coming up to me is how you do something is how you do everything. You have to have those traits on and off the field that allow you to connect with people. And you talk about leaders have scars. It makes us more approachable at the end of the day when you've battled that adversity and you can share that and empathize with your teammates, because that's when you see someone is down and you're able to go up to them and say, hey man, great job, you're doing great out there. And then you build more of a bond and connection. And I think ultimately that's what the best teams that I've been on have had. There's that camaraderie and that trust in one another that isn't there if you don't battle and battle and battle and have something to bond over. And it really takes someone who is fearless with what their integrity is, because I think that's the biggest thing is we have core integrities and we know what's right or wrong. And coaches help us set the standards on the lacrosse field and in life. And one of the big things that I love hearing from you, whether it was on videos or whatever it may be, is there's not really a boundary of family and lacrosse for you. It all blends together. So what you're telling your kids is what you're telling your players. And I think that's so critical. And we can't thank you enough for being a part of this. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I definitely would be remiss if I didn't let you share a little bit more about Harlem Lacrosse as well, since you're wearing the shirt.
Yeah, and I think, Ryan, it's funny that you should, bring that together like that, because it's exactly what I was going to add is that, developing a set of values that are important, and they carry over in your personal life and they carry over into your work life. That's really important. I had a young coach ask me recently, what's one piece of advice you would give me? He was about to start his first season as a head coach. And I said, again, he put me on the spot a little bit. And I thought to myself, and what I finally said to him was, just be your authentic self. And that's the most important thing. The Harlem Lacrosse piece, I've been involved with Harlem for almost 10 years now. One of the original executive board members, one of my former players was their first full-time employee. That's how I got involved. This was a guy, a private school kid from Florida, blonde hair, fair skin. What he was doing in Midtown Manhattan, I just couldn't believe it. And so when I saw what he was doing, I offered my services to Harlem, and they jumped all over it. And so I've been involved ever since. It's been a labor of love. This is an organization that, gets to provide mentorship and counseling to underrepresented people, underserved people in the middle, in the center city. We now are in 5 cities with 40 full-time employees and serving 1,000 young people. And so people talk about diversity in the game. I think Harlem is making a real effort to get that, but that's not the goal. The goal is to grow the child, and so we'll take it one at a time if we have to. And on that path to that goal, we are also growing the game in some areas where the game could easily grow. And so for me, it's been a labor of love, and I've been blessed to be a part of it.
Well, Dom, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our community before we wrap this up?
No, I'm just, again, it's a pleasure for me to be here today. I love talking about these subjects. One of my former players is out your way now. Pat Harbison is out at Brophy High School coaching, and so take good care, Patrick. And like I say, hopefully we'll catch up again somewhere soon.
Absolutely, Don. We're so blessed to have Pat out here and bringing what you've taught and instilled in him to our community. It's unbelievable, and we definitely will stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan.